Champagne cascaded down her trembling shoulders as the country club fell silent, shame flooding her while those entitled brats sneered. Then a Rolls-Royce door slammed in the parking lot. Every conversation stopped, and the tech billionaire who'd built empires from code saw his favorite server drowning in humiliation. His expression went cold. His voice, when it came, was surgical. And what happened next made the entire elite membership question whether privilege or consequence would decide their futures. If this opening grabbed you, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing the global community we're building here. Tomorrow's story is even more intense. You won't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The crystal flute shattered against Italian marble, sending shards across the terrace like fallen stars. Maya Chen stood frozen in her white server's uniform, now transparent with Dom Perignon, the expensive champagne dripping from her black hair down her face. 3 young men in polo shirts and deck shoes surrounded her, their laughter cutting through the soft classical music drifting from the Oakmont Country Club's speakers. One of them, a blonde named Preston, tilted another bottle, pouring slowly, deliberately, his phone recording every humiliating second. The other members pretended to focus on their lobster bisque and aged steaks, but Maya felt their stares burning into her back. Then, the parking lot gate opened with a mechanical hum, and a midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom glided through like a predator returning to its territory. Maya had worked at Oakmont for 2 years. 2 years of serving people who looked through her like she was furniture, people who discussed million-dollar deals while she refilled their water glasses, people who complained about the temperature of their soup while she stood there, invisible, her feet aching in shoes she couldn't afford to replace. But she never complained. The tips kept her mother's dialysis bills paid. The health insurance, minimal as it was, covered her brother's medication. And most importantly, every Thursday evening at exactly 7, David Chen arrived. No relation, despite the shared surname, just coincidence. But in the 2 years she'd worked here, he'd never missed a Thursday. He'd order the same thing, rare steak, no sides, black coffee. He'd sit alone at table 12 overlooking the golf course. He'd work on his laptop, occasionally taking calls in Mandarin or English, building whatever new technology was revolutionizing industries. And he always asked how she was doing, really asked, looked her in the eyes like she was a person, not a servant, remembered details from previous conversations. Once, when she'd mentioned her mother's birthday, he had asked the chef to prepare a complimentary meal to go. When her brother needed emergency medication she couldn't afford, an anonymous donation appeared at the hospital the next day. She could never prove it was him, but she knew. Tonight started with an accident. A stupid, completely unintentional accident. Maya had been carrying a tray of champagne flutes when Preston's friend, Brock, pushed his chair back without warning. She tried to pivot, tried to save the tray, but momentum and exhaustion won. One glass tipped, spilling champagne down Preston's pastel pink polo shirt. "Jesus Christ!" Preston leaped up, his face flushing red. "Do you know how much this shirt costs?" "I'm so sorry, sir. Please, let me get you a towel." "Let you what?" The third one, Tyler, grabbed her wrist. His grip was unnecessarily tight. "Ruin it more. You just destroyed a $400 shirt, sweetheart." Maya's throat constricted. "I'll pay for it. I'll work extra shifts." "Your poverty wages?" Preston laughed, pulling out his phone. "This is going on TikTok. Everyone needs to see how the help treats their betters at Oakmont." The terrace had gone quiet. Even the string quartet seemed to sense the shift, their Vivaldi fading to an uncertain whisper. "Get on your knees," Tyler said. Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard him." Preston grabbed a fresh bottle of Dom Perignon from a nearby ice bucket. "You spilled champagne on me. Now we're going to see how you like being soaked. Fair is fair." "Please," I apologized. "I didn't mean knees, now." Brock shoved her shoulder. Maya's legs buckled. The marble was cold and hard beneath her uniform. She could see expensive Italian loafers, Hermes handbags resting beside chairs, the scattered crystal shards reflecting candlelight like accusatory eyes. Preston uncorked the bottle with a theatrical pop. "You know what your problem is?" He circled her like a shark. "You people think you belong here, but you're just the help. You serve us. You don't get to ruin our things and walk away." "Preston, Maybe that's enough. An older woman started to stand. Sit down, Mrs. Crawford. This doesn't concern you. Tyler's voice was flat. Mrs. Crawford sat. The first pour was shockingly cold. Maya gasped as champagne splashed over her head, soaking through her hair, running down her neck. The bubbles stung her eyes. She squeezed them shut, hands pressed flat against her thighs, trying to hold on to whatever dignity remained. "Oops," Preston said, his phone still recording. "My hand slipped. Guess we're even now." "Actually," Tyler grabbed another bottle. "I think she owes me too. My shoes got splashed." Maya's uniform clung to her skin, transparent, revealing her tank top underneath. She heard gasps from nearby tables, heard chairs scraping, but no one intervened. They never did. "Guys, come on, this is too much." A young waiter's voice, uncertain. "It's too much when I say it's too much," Preston snapped. "Unless you want to join her?" The waiter retreated. Preston raised the bottle again, angling his phone for the perfect shot. Maya's quiet sobs were barely audible beneath the music, beneath the cruel laughter, beneath the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. And then the Rolls-Royce door slammed in the parking lot, the sound echoing across the terrace like a gunshot. A man in a perfectly tailored navy suit appeared at the terrace entrance. David Chen. Early 40s, silver touching his temples, wearing rimless glasses that reflected the candlelight. His expression was perfectly neutral as his eyes swept the scene with the precision of someone who processed information at computational speed. The laughter died instantly. The bottle in Preston's hand froze mid-pour. David Chen had arrived for his Thursday dinner. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet, almost conversational. "Preston Ashford, Tyler Bennett, Brock Morrison." He said each name like he was reading a list. "That's my server." The bottle slipped from Preston's hand, exploding against the marble. David didn't move, didn't need to, but something in the air had changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every person on that terrace suddenly remembered that the polite man who ordered steak every Thursday had arrived at Oakmont 2 years ago and purchased a 40% stake in the club, that he'd made his first billion by 28, that he'd destroyed 3 Fortune 500 companies just by releasing better software, that when he spoke, markets moved. "Stand up, Maya." His voice remained calm, almost gentle. Maya tried. Her legs shook. She managed to get one foot under her, slipped on spilled champagne, would have fallen if David hadn't crossed the terrace in smooth strides and caught her elbow. His grip was firm but careful. "Easy. You're all right now." Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, hidden behind those glasses. Could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. She'd served him 100 Thursday dinners, but she'd never been this close. "Thank you, Mr. Chen," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. You did nothing wrong." He said it like he was stating a mathematical fact. Then he turned to face the 3 young men, and his expression shifted. Not angry. Worse than angry. Calculating. David Chen had rules. Anyone who'd worked with him knew them. Don't lie, don't steal, don't abuse power. Those weren't suggestions. They were algorithms that ran his entire operation. 20 years ago, David had been a scholarship kid at Stanford, surrounded by legacy admissions and trust fund babies who treated him like he didn't belong. He'd watched them cheat on exams, buy their way into internships, destroy other students' projects out of boredom. He'd watched a girl named Jennifer, another scholarship student, get sexually harassed by 3 fraternity brothers. Watched her report it. Watched nothing happen because their fathers were donors. Jennifer dropped out. Last he'd heard, she was managing a Target in Ohio, her dreams of being a software engineer buried under PTSD and student debt. David had graduated, built his first company, sold it for $800 million, and made a promise. Power without accountability was just cruelty with a prettier name. Now, 20 years later, he stood in a country club he partially owned, looking at 3 trust fund kids who'd used their privilege to humiliate someone who worked 12-hour shifts to keep her family alive. "Maya," David said, still watching the 3 men, "go to the manager's office. There's a private bathroom. Clean uniforms in the locker. Take your time. When you're ready, come back." "Mr. Chen, I should just go home." It's not a request, but his tone was kind. "Go." Maya glanced at Preston, Tyler, and Brock, then hurried toward the clubhouse, leaving wet footprints across the terrace. The moment she disappeared inside, David's expression went completely flat. "Lock the terrace doors." A senior waiter named Jerome moved immediately, securing the French doors from the inside. Another waiter locked the service entrance. "Nobody leaves," David said, removing his suit jacket with precise movements, "until we discuss what respect costs at my club." He pulled out a chair and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. His hands rested on the white tablecloth, perfectly still. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried through the terrified silence like a knife through silk. "Whose hands opened that bottle?" Neither Preston, Tyler, nor Brock answered. They stood in the center of the terrace, champagne still dripping from their fingers, their faces pale beneath the soft lighting. "I asked a question." David didn't raise his voice. "Whose hands opened the bottle of Dom Perignon that's currently soaking into my employee's hair and uniform?" Preston finally found his voice. "Mr. Chen, listen, she spilled champagne on me first, on my shirt. I asked whose hands, not whose mouth, not whose excuse, whose hands." Tyler cleared his throat. "We both, all three of us were involved, sir." "All three?" David nodded slowly. He looked around the terrace, taking in the frozen members, the waiters pressed against walls. "Did anyone witness what happened before these gentlemen decided to baptize my server in $1,000 champagne?" Mrs. Crawford raised a shaking hand. "The girl, Maya. She bumped into a chair. It was clearly an accident. She apologized immediately." "An accident," David repeated. He looked back at Preston. "So you poured champagne on a woman's head because she had an accident?" "She disrespected me," Preston said, heat creeping into his voice. "Made me look like a fool." "You made yourself look like a fool." David's words were surgical. "And now you've made me look worse. Do you understand what that costs?" David stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. He walked to the bar where bottles lined glass shelves. He selected one, Dom Perignon, the same vintage Preston had used, and returned to his table. "Jerome," David said, "bring me 3 glasses, clean." Jerome complied, setting the stemware on David's table with shaking hands. David filled each glass exactly 1/3 full. He held one up to the candlelight, examined the golden bubbles. "Beautiful, isn't it?" He took a sip. "Notes of brioche, white peach, almond. This bottle costs $600. Do you know why?" No one answered. "Because someone cared." David set the glass down. "A winemaker in France spent decades perfecting this. All that work so that people like us could sit in places like this and pretend we're civilized." He looked at Preston, Tyler, and Brock. "But we're not civilized, are we? We're animals who learn to wear expensive clothes, and the only thing separating us from complete savagery is this," he tapped his temple, "the ability to choose restraint over impulse, to understand that privilege is a responsibility, not a weapon." Preston's hands were shaking now. Tyler had gone completely still. David picked up one of the champagne glasses. "Maya works 3 jobs. Did you know that? She's putting her brother through community college, pays for her mother's dialysis, never complains." His voice dropped. "And when I come here after 90-hour work weeks, she's the only person who treats me like a human being instead of a walking bank account." He set the glass down. "So when you put your hands on her, when you humiliated her in my club in front of my members, you didn't just disrespect a server." His voice became arctic. "You disrespected me." The terrace felt 20 degrees colder. "Mr. Chen, we didn't think," Tyler started. "No, you didn't." David walked toward them slowly. "And that's the problem. You thought your father's money was permission. You thought your last names were shields. You forgot that privilege without character is just expensive mediocrity." He stopped 3 feet away. "Kneel." "What?" Preston's voice cracked. "You heard me, all 3 of you. Kneel on this terrace, the same way you made Maya kneel." "Mr. Chen, please, kneel." The word echoed like a courtroom gavel. Slowly, Preston lowered himself to the marble floor. Tyler followed, then Brock. David stood over them. "Now we begin." David walked back to the bar. "Jerome, bring me 3 ice buckets. Fill them halfway with champagne, the same Dom Perignon." Jerome's eyes widened, but he complied. Within minutes, 3 silver ice buckets sat before the kneeling men, champagne bubbling inside each one. David returned to his table. My father was a line cook in Chinatown, worked 16-hour days for 30 years, never made more than $40,000 a year, but he taught me something. He looked at Preston, Tyler, and Brock. That how you treat people with less power than you defines everything about who you are. He took a sip of champagne. You 3 attend Stanford. Preston, your father donated $15 million for the new building. Tyler, your family owns the 3rd largest hedge fund in Connecticut. Brock, your grandfather was a senator. He set the glass down. All that privilege, all those advantages, and you used them to pour champagne on a woman's head for TikTok views. Preston's face had gone pale. So here's what's going to happen, David continued. You're each going to drink from these buckets, every drop, because you thought champagne was cheap enough to waste on cruelty. You can't be serious, Brock whispered. Do I look like I'm joking? David's expression was ice. Drink, or I'll have you physically removed from this club, banned permanently, and I'll personally call Stanford to discuss whether students who commit assault on camera deserve to keep their enrollment. That wasn't assault, Preston started. I have security footage from 12 angles. I have 40 witnesses. I have your own TikTok recording. Try me. Preston leaned forward first, gripping the bucket sides. He lowered his face to the champagne. The first sip made him gag. The second made him cough. By the third, tears streamed down his face. Tyler and Brock followed, their shoulders shaking. More, David said, until the buckets are empty. The members watched in horrified fascination. Some looked away. Mrs. Crawford cried quietly into her napkin. But no one left. 20 minutes passed. 20 minutes of drinking and gagging and quiet retching. Preston vomited twice. Tyler's face turned an alarming shade of red. Brock cried openly. When the buckets were finally empty, David raised his hand. Enough. They collapsed backward, gasping, their expensive clothes ruined, champagne dripping from their chins. And then Maya emerged from the clubhouse. She'd changed into a fresh uniform, her hair pulled back neatly. She froze when she saw Preston, Tyler, and Brock on the ground. Maya, David said gently, come here. She approached slowly. David gestured to the 3 men. These gentlemen owe you an apology. But first I want you to understand something. He looked at them. In my world, we have systems, protocols we don't violate. These men violated one tonight. They forgot that power is a responsibility, not a toy. He turned to Maya. They're going to apologize now, and then they're going to learn what consequences feel like. Maya's voice was barely audible. Mr. Chen, you don't have to— Yes, I do. His tone was final. Because if I don't, tomorrow there will be another Maya, another bottle, another group of entitled brats who think money buys them immunity from basic decency. He looked at the 3 men. Apologize. Now. Preston's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Maya, for what I did, for humiliating you. It was wrong. Tyler spoke hoarsely. I'm sorry, too. We were completely out of line. Brock could barely speak. I'm so sorry. Maya stood there, arms wrapped around herself. She looked at each of them, then at David. I forgive you, she said quietly. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. David stared at her. His controlled expression cracked. What? I forgive them. Maya's voice was stronger. Please, Mr. Chen. They've learned their lesson. Don't hurt them anymore. They humiliated you, David said carefully. And you're asking me to show them mercy? Maya nodded. My grandmother used to say that anyone can be cruel when they have power. It takes real strength to choose kindness instead. The words hit David like a blow. He took a step back. Jennifer had said something similar 20 years ago. The hard part isn't surviving them, David. It's not becoming them. David blinked. He was back on the terrace. Maya stood before him, this woman who'd shown him consistent kindness for 2 years, who'd never treated him like an ATM. You shouldn't forgive monsters, David said quietly. Maya met his eyes. Then teach them not to be. David looked down at Preston, Tyler, and Brock. They stared up at him, their futures balanced on a knife's edge. Stand up, David said. They struggled to their feet, champagne dripping from their clothes. David picked up his phone and made a call. Tom? It's David. I need 3 employment contracts. Yes, tonight. He hung up and looked at the 3 young men. You're each suspended from this club indefinitely. You'll spend the next year working full-time at my company's customer service division. Entry-level pay, $15 an hour. You'll answer phones, handle complaints, deal with angry customers who think you're beneath them. Preston's eyes widened. Mr. Chen, I'm not finished. You'll work every weekend, every holiday. You'll learn what it's like to serve people who don't see you as human. And at the end of 1 year, if you've shown genuine change, if Maya herself vouches for your character, I'll write recommendation letters for your return to Stanford. If not, his voice hardened, I'll make sure every school, every company, every country club knows exactly what you did tonight. He looked at Maya. Is that acceptable? Maya wiped her eyes. That's more than fair. Good. David turned to Jerome. Unlock the doors. As the terrace cleared, as Preston, Tyler, and Brock were escorted away, Maya approached David's table. Thank you, she whispered, for protecting me. David looked at her, something vulnerable in his eyes. Thank you for reminding me that revenge and justice aren't the same thing, that mercy isn't weakness. He stood, putting on his jacket. There's an envelope in your locker. Compensation for emotional distress. Also, he pulled out a business card. My personal attorney. We're setting up a trust fund for your mother's medical care, non-negotiable. Mr. Chen, I can't. You reminded a billionaire that kindness still matters, Maya. That's worth more than any code I've ever written. He walked toward the parking lot, pausing at the terrace edge. I'll see you next Thursday, same table, same time. For your steak dinner? David smiled, the expression transforming his face. For the only hour all week when someone treats me like I'm still human. He disappeared into the night, the Rolls-Royce gliding away. 6 months later, Preston, Tyler, and Brock were still answering customer service calls. They arrived early, stayed late, learned what it meant to be screamed at by people who would never know their names. They discovered that real humility comes from serving others without recognition. Maya started college, her tuition paid in full. She still worked at Oakmont 2 nights a week because she wanted to, not because she had to. And every Thursday at 7, David Chen arrived for his steak dinner. And sometimes, if you visited Oakmont on a Thursday evening, you'd see something unusual. A tech billionaire and a college student sharing a table, sharing a conversation, proving that respect has nothing to do with status and everything to do with character. Because that night on the terrace, David Chen taught the world that true power isn't about what you can do to others. It's about what you choose not to do and what you choose to do instead. Some wounds don't live on the skin. They live in the soul. But so does healing, if you're brave enough to choose it. Thanks for reading to the end. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit subscribe for more stories that remind us who we should strive to be. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.